Hey, this soup for breakfast is so bland. Why is it so watery? It's terrible. I'm trying to make it healthier. The doctor said I need to watch the salt. Who cares? I love rich flavors. This was my mother-in-law, or MIL for short. She always craves overly seasoned food, even though she's overweight and borderline diabetic. Her doctor gave her strict warnings, but she ignores them, dumping an unreasonable amount of salt and pepper into anything I cook. I watched, stunned, as she doctored the soup I'd carefully prepared with low-sodium ingredients. Apparently, nothing I make is ever good enough. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if she's trying to kill herself with all that extra seasoning. If she did, I wouldn't exactly be heartbroken. Lyle seems to live for making my life difficult. Every day, it's constant complaints, insults, and spiteful behavior. I'm Alice, 29, a working woman who also juggles housewife duties. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, but we don't have any children yet. That's because of me, apparently. My infertility is her favorite weapon against me. You're worthless as a woman if you can't have children. Defective, really, she'd say with a smug smile. You should be grateful you're even allowed to stay in this house. Sometimes I agreed. After so many failed attempts at conceiving, I felt defective. I drew the short straw in life, it seemed. Haha, how could you say that? I replied once, but my heart wasn't in it. Because it's true. A woman who can't have kids is finished, she snapped. She's right, my husband chimed in, laughing. Defective. That word crushed me. I want a baby more than anything. I've been visiting doctors, trying different treatments, but it's draining both physically and emotionally. The costs are overwhelming too, and after so much failure, I decided to stop the treatments altogether. Ironically, my husband used to complain about the money we were spending on fertility treatments, calling it a waste, yet he never stopped pressuring me to get pregnant. What's the point of pressuring me? I said sharply. I can't get pregnant if it's not happening. After stopping the treatments, I had briefly entertained the idea of living happily with just the two of us. But my mother-in-law hadn't given up her obsession with a grandchild. To taunt me, she even bought diapers and paraded them around. Look, I bought diapers, she announced with a smirk. Excuse me? You'll need them eventually, she said with a grin. Aren't those a bit small for you to wear, MIL? I replied dryly. Ha, these are for a baby, can't you see that? Well, I wouldn't know. I'm just the defective woman who can't have children, remember? Her laughter cut through the tension, but her expression shifted quickly. That's enough, she snapped, storming off to her room, visibly angry. I sighed in relief. Exhausted from work, I had no patience for her snide remarks anymore. She seemed to have nothing better to do than make my life miserable. We had moved in with my in-laws after my father-in-law passed away last year. My mother-in-law was devastated by his death, and around the same time, she had been diagnosed with borderline diabetes. My husband insisted we move in to support her, though honestly she seemed fine as long as she took her meds and followed a healthy diet. The problem was, she did neither. She ignored her medication and ate whatever she wanted, making her condition likely to get worse. Still, I had no intention of being her caregiver. In my 20s, working a demanding job and taking care of my in-laws was not the life I envisioned. The next day, my day off, I was busy with house chores when MIL, who usually lounged on the sofa eating snacks, suddenly got up and walked into my room. Annoyed but with my hands full, I let it go. I cleaned your room for you, she said with a smug smile. Oh, thanks, I replied, sensing something off. You know, if you leave your room messy, you'll attract bugs. Maybe I should switch rooms with your husband, she added, her tone dripping with mock concern. Right. Thanks for the advice, I muttered, forcing a smile. She seemed to think I was grateful, which only made me more suspicious. Something was definitely up. That night, I decided to sleep in my husband's room instead of mine. He had been away on a business trip since the day before, and I knew he wouldn't mind if I took over his space. We usually slept in separate rooms, partly because our relationship had cooled off, but mostly due to my night shifts as a nurse. I didn't want to disturb him with my irregular hours. Once MIL had retreated to her room, I quietly made my way to my husband's room and settled in. For 2 days, I slept there, and MIL seemed oddly suspicious. She watched me closely, probably because I looked too cheerful for her liking. My mother-in-law started asking strange questions. "Don't you feel any pain or anything?" she asked, a little too casually. "Huh? What do you mean?" "Oh, never mind," she said, avoiding eye contact. Was she suspecting something? Her sudden shift in behavior had me on edge, but I had the night shift coming up and needed to relax before work. That's easier said than done with NIL around. She never lifts a finger, just lounges on the couch, snacking and reading Japanese comics aimed at women. I caught a glimpse of one of the covers. It was a sloppily translated English version titled Epic Mother and Daughter-in-Law Swamp Battle. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her choice of reading material. It seemed fitting for her. She was probably plotting her next move to make me, the bratty daughter-in-law, miserable. Later that night, my husband returned from his business trip, already looking exhausted. It was nearly 10 p.m. I'm wiped. I'm hopping in the bath. Sure, I'll heat it up for you. Grab a beer while you wait. Thanks, I will. Actually, wait. It's not safe to drink alcohol before a bath. Fine, I'll go for a non-alcoholic beer then, he said, a little annoyed. Reluctantly, he grabbed the non-alcoholic beer because I had warned him about the risks of mixing alcohol with a hot bath. You'd think he'd know better. Even saunas post signs about not drinking before entering, but common sense isn't something that comes naturally to him or my mother-in-law, for that matter. After his bath, my husband started singing, loudly. We live in a single-family home, but still, at that hour, it was bound to annoy the neighbors. La 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 la, he sang at the top of his lungs. Hey, you're too loud. Quiet down. I warned him. You're the one who's loud, he shot back, clearly not planning to stop. My mother-in-law, of course, took this opportunity to chime in, strolling into the bathroom area like she had something important to add. Wackham's just trying to have a good time. What's the problem? You really don't know how to treat your husband, do you? Always complaining, always nagging. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to argue back. It was always the same routine, or acting like the perfect, loving mother-in-law while constantly undermining me. So inconsiderate and full of complaints, my mother-in-law muttered. Hey, I'm not the one constantly complaining, MIL, I shot back. Ha, back talk, huh? You're definitely not cute. Not that you were ever a beauty to begin with. That's fine by me. I'm probably a knockout in some other country, I quipped with a shrug. She laughed, but I could tell she didn't appreciate my comeback. Meanwhile, my husband stepped out of the bath and grabbed a drink. It was already 10:30 p.m., and I needed to head to the hospital for my night shift. Oh, by the way, I've been sleeping in your room. Would you mind switching with me tonight? My clothes are everywhere. Ah, sure, whatever, he replied, not really paying attention. All right, I'm off then. Take care, I whispered to him quietly, hoping MIL wouldn't hear. Just as I was about to grab my bag and leave, I heard my husband let out a loud groan. What? What happened? I turned around to see him curled up on the floor, clutching his leg in pain. He looked like he was in agony. MIL's face went pale, and she started panicking. What's going on? Speak. But no matter what I asked, he couldn't respond. I was about to rush over when I noticed something odd. The floor was unusually slippery. Even with socks on, I could barely keep my balance. What the heck is this? I muttered, trying not to slip myself. Watkin? MIL, what on earth did you do? I didn't do anything. It's not my fault, she stammered, her voice shaky. Blaming her wasn't going to solve anything, so I immediately called for an ambulance. My husband was rushed to the hospital. Work was the last thing on my mind at that moment. He kept clutching his leg even after we arrived at the hospital. His face slick with sweat and pain etched all over it. It was clear he was in serious trouble. Ow, it hurts so bad, he groaned. Hang in there, Watkin. Help is coming, I said, trying to stay calm. Thankfully, the doctor examined him quickly, and I could see some relief wash over my husband. As we suspected, his leg was indeed broken, a fifth metatarsal fracture, caused by twisting his ankle when he slipped on the slick floor. His foot was swollen, and everything made sense. People usually fracture that bone by tripping or putting too much weight on it, which is exactly what happened to him. I knew the pain all too well. A few years ago, I twisted my ankle falling down the stairs while lost in my music. I heard a loud snap, and the pain was unbearable. It turned out to be a fifth metatarsal fracture as well. It was so embarrassing that I even lied to my friends about how it happened. Since his injury didn't require hospitalization, my husband was allowed to come home. I was scheduled for the night shift at the hospital, but my nursing supervisor insisted I take the night off. It wasn't a life or death situation, but I guess she was genuinely concerned. I survived, but now I've got a fever, Watkins said, wincing. Well, you broke your leg. Of course you'd have a fever, I replied, trying to comfort him. But the question that lingered in my mind was, why had the floor been so slippery in the first place? Why don't we ask Mil about that, huh? I said, anger bubbling up inside me. My husband turned to her. Hey, what did you do to the floor in that room? Well, she stammered, trying to avoid eye contact. The floor was all slippery. That's why I slipped and fell. I could have seriously broken my leg. That room is for my daughter-in-law, so I greased the floor. What? My husband's eyes widened in shock. I was hoping she would slip, so I put a lot of grease down. I never expected you to go in there and fall, she said, her tone casual, as if she hadn't just admitted to endangering my life. Unbelievable. My mother-in-law had deliberately greased the floor to make me fall. She had claimed to clean the room, but her real intention was to harm me. Rage surged through me. If I had walked into that room, I might have broken my leg, or worse, hit my head, which could have been fatal. What she did wasn't just reckless, it was criminal. You're despicable, my husband seethed. You're not family to me anymore. I got seriously hurt because of you. I'm going to the police, he declared, grabbing his phone. Wait, I didn't directly hurt anyone, did I? She protested, panic creeping into her voice. It's not my fault. Your wife told you to go into her room, so she's the one to blame. Shut up, he snapped. That's not the point. You're getting arrested. Mil lunged to snatch the phone from him, but even with his broken leg, my husband was stronger. He clutched his phone tightly, already speaking to the police. As I stood there, watching this nightmare unfold, I couldn't help but think I'd rather be at work. Dealing with patients, no matter how stressful, was better than dealing with this chaos. The neighbors would catch wind of this soon enough. And honestly, maybe they should. What she'd done wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was dangerous. You know, I said, turning to Mil. I could have been hurt too. Maybe I should also talk to the police. What? No, I didn't mean to hurt you. You don't know for sure I'd be charged with anything. You knew the risks, I said, my voice cold. Or did you think you could just erase me from this world without consequences? Well, I did think it would be better if you just disappeared, she muttered. My blood ran cold. You're the worst. Your mindset is criminal. Personally, I think you should stay in jail forever. My husband, still on the phone, looked at me with a mix of shock and exhaustion. Let's get a divorce. What? Mil gasped. I can't do this anymore, he said, shaking his head. If I stay in this house, she might actually succeed in getting rid of you one day. I'm too scared to live with that. And honestly, your lack of morals disgusts me. Wait, don't say we'll get divorced over this. My husband fixed his gaze on her. This? You've insulted my wife, called her defective. Do you even realize how much that hurts? I can live without you just fine. No, I need you, my mother-in-law cried, her voice desperate. I was counting on your income. I even just signed a new car contract. What? I turned to her, stunned. I finally got the Toyota Century I've always wanted, straight from Japan, she said, her voice shaking. I don't care anymore, I replied coldly. I cleaned up the greasy floor, threw my things into a bag, and stuffed more into my carry-on. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the table. As I rummaged through a shelf of dishes, I thought about the divorce papers. Then I found them, the very papers my husband had written years ago. Remember this? I held up the divorce papers. You said if I couldn't have a child within 2 years, we'd get a divorce. Well, here we are. I can't have children, so let's end this. You must feel relieved now. Wait, what about the loan for my Century? He stammered. Who cares? I said, walking out the door. I headed straight to the hospital. When I arrived, the charge nurse didn't ask questions. She could tell something was up. Being a nurse, I knew I could support myself without needing a husband or a toxic family. I wondered why I had endured so much, being treated like a servant and putting up with their cruelty. The more I thought about it, the more ridiculous it all seemed. The next morning, I filed for divorce. He became my ex-husband that day. Given the emotional toll he and his family put me through, I consulted a lawyer to seek compensation. In the end, my ex-husband was ordered to pay me. A part of me thought, serves you right. Since the police got involved, the neighbors turned their backs on my mother-in-law. She couldn't keep quiet and told everyone how her son broke his leg. And now they all think she's a terrible parent. My ex-husband doesn't want anything to do with her anymore and even kicked her out. She's been living on a small survivor's benefit, complaining that it's impossible to make ends meet. Her once lavish lifestyle has turned into a struggle just to get by. As for my ex-husband, I don't care what happens to him. He made a foolish decision, buying a car without thinking it through. I'm sure he can't afford it now, especially since he always assumed I'd be there to help with the bills. His lack of foresight annoyed me, but it's no longer my problem. Later, I started dating a doctor at the hospital. 2 years after that, we got married, and to my amazement, we were blessed with a child. It felt like a miracle, especially after everything I've been through. From now on, I'm dedicated to my new family, focused on building a future full of love and happiness.